Obviously, there's familiarity between him and the head coach, play caller Josh McDaniels from their time in New England, but that was some time ago, and this offense is very different from the one that Garoppolo's been running in San Francisco the last 2 years. It's also concerning because we are, of course, talking about a player with significant injury history. This, I would argue, is the number one reason why he is no longer a San Francisco 49er, why he was available for Las Vegas. So for him to have another serious injury, even if it's one that they expect him to recover from this summer, it's still concerning. And then finally, I would add depth. And this is something I would put on the Raiders organization if they knew about the injury. Last year, Jarrett Stidham came off of the bench and played really well. He's no longer on this team. Jimmy Garoppolo's backup is Brian Hoyer. I have to ask why they didn't seek a better situation knowing that he had an injury coming into the summer before they signed him, because I don't think Raiders fans want to see Brian.
Surgery that he had in March. Head coach Josh McDaniels explained why his quarterback won't be practicing and doesn't know when he's going to be back.
You won't see him today. There's a number of guys that you're not going to see. Again, you'll see him. I mean, I'm not going to run down a list every time here, but he's going through his process just like we knew he would. I'm really, honestly, not going to talk about the specifics of those things. Again, those are private to those guys individually. But everything that's happened since we've signed Jimmy, we knew ahead of time. It's the same thing with Tyree. I would say it's the same thing with a number of guys that we're aware of. So certainly had an awareness of all of it. And again, our preference is to push and rush anybody back at this point in time. Could we? I mean, you could make that decision. It's just, I think the most important time of the year is going to happen when we get to training camp so that we're ready to go. We can do the work we need to do in August.
Armina, I had
to assume. So we'll see. Look, I think it's fine. You're right. We're at the time of year where we can continue to just rehabilitate. But to me, for a guy, as Mina said, we're talking about who's dealt with injuries, the reason why he probably lasts this long on the open market. So I guess I can just say we'll see.
Okay, we will see. And by the way, if you thought it stopped there for the Raiders, don't forget just a couple of weeks ago when Davante Adams spoke to The Ringer and had this to say. This is about the front office. Quote, "They think this is the best bet for us right now to put us in a position to be urgent. We don't see eye to eye on what we think is best for us right now. I'm going to have to buy into this and try to be as optimistic as possible. It's not what I expected to happen, but it's something that's the reality now," end quote. Here's Josh McDaniels on those comments earlier today.
Davante and I have talked. I mean, and again, I don't really, it's not really my concern that anybody necessarily adopts, every vision that Dave or I have for, the decisions that we have to make. Sometimes those are difficult. The thing I'd say about a player like Davante, and we have many other players in this same category, is they have an opinion and a voice because they've earned it. And I respect the hell out of anything that they would say or say.
Although, look, they knew what the injury was the entire time. They're not going to disclose that information to the public. It's not significant to the point that he's going to miss significant time. He'll be the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season. Yes, it has some change that has happened since his time in Josh McDaniels' system in New England, but it's like riding a bicycle. You know where you're supposed to go with the ball. You know the progressions, and they're going to change some things from time to time, but they're going to do things that he's comfortable with, that he is successful at doing, or at least the things he was successful at doing in New England. They're going to implement that back into the game plan. I wouldn't worry about it at all. It's too early to set into a panic. This isn't a broken ankle, broken foot, or anything like that. I think he'll be fine come time when he's ready to go.
Key, I want to be with you there, and I want to give Josh McDaniel the benefit of the doubt when we talk about this foot injury, but at the same time, they didn't know everything when they signed him. There was a reason why they delayed his press conference, because they learned during the physical that this injury was going to require surgery, that it wasn't exactly what they initially expected coming out of San Francisco. So, look, yes, as Josh McDaniels said, there's 100 days between now and the start of the season. There's plenty of time for this to get.
Or a comment or a discussion is had, and those are the right things to do, and those players have earned it.
I'm a Raider, and I'm excited to be here. I love my head coach, and I love the general manager here and everybody. I mean, from the top to the bottom. So I have no reason to lie. I mean, one thing I don't do is BS, so I'm not going to make anything up when it comes to that. I'd rather keep my mouth closed if I have negative things to say, but when I say that these are some good men in this place that I really value the relationship that I have with them, I mean that.
All right, so a little bit different tone there from Davante in that second quote, but it would be great, like if we could find like a formerly outspoken wide receiver who was maybe for bringing some color to this situation. Keith, what do you think of all this from Davante Adams? Because obviously, even if his tone today was different, that quote to the Ringer a couple weeks ago was fairly notable to me.
Well, I'm the only guy on the show in Derek Carr. Well,
that has been the case his entire career. I do think it's important to note that it's clearly about the situation, the departure of Carr. It doesn't sound like there's any sort of discrepancy between him and the head coach.
One thing, we jump back in here real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, to follow up what you're saying, Mina, one thing that receivers do, when we get introduced to a playbook, the first thing we do is we look, and we start looking to see what plays you got in there. And Davante Adams went to that playbook. He started looking. He was like, oh, no, we running sticks and dink and dunks. That's what he did. I'm telling you what he did.
That's like when I used to go into the yearbook and look in the index for my name just so I could flip back to see whatever pictures I was in. Look,
Seminole High School.
I don't speak wide receiver, but I do speak sports reporter, and cynical sports reporter at that. So my only concern here is that we're not going down the same road that Josh McDaniels went down when he was the head coach of the Denver Broncos. Yeah. I think that Davante Adams did a really good job. Being
told something, and then it changes right before your eyes, you're going to be disappointed in that moment in time. Now, there's a different tone, like you mentioned, Phil, about now what he's saying, because they had a conversation, and they said, hey, do us a favor. Just keep it in-house. We don't want to be answering questions from reporters about the things that you've said. Now, he went out there and he balled with Carr. Is he going to do the same things with Jimmy Garoppolo? Probably not, because Jimmy, to me, isn't the same type of quarterback that Carr is with Davante Adams.
Yeah, I mean, Key, you're absolutely right. I don't think you need to be a former wide receiver to know that Davante Adams would not be a Las Vegas Raider if Derek Carr wasn't the quarterback when the trade happened. They're friends from college. It was his primary reason for choosing Vegas. And as you alluded to, I think his departure is disappointing, not only from a personal senses, to lean heavily on unsuccessful runs. See how Tony Pollard.
I thought it was pretty disconcerting.
All right, so by the way, even if Davante Adams is content and all is good, one thing we do know, two of the Raiders' biggest additions this offseason, Jimmy Garoppolo and Tyree Wilson, their first pick, 7th overall. Significant foot issue, something to keep an eye on as we get closer to training camp. Yeah. The Dallas Cowboys, of course, also in OTAs today as they look to transform their team into more of a ground and pound offense with a great defense behind it. Mike McCarthy, their head coach, who loves to run the football, spoke a short time ago.
We're still in Dak's language, we're definitely built off of, if you just look at the history of our offense here, 2020 was really trying to really figure out who we wanted to be, if in that year with the pandemic and all the injuries and so forth. So, but I think the evolution of 21 and 22 is where the evolution from 21 to 22 is really the direct of those 3 years of offense and in the areas of how we've the direction we're going. We'll continue on that direction.
All right, let's look at those 3 years he's talking about, by the way. Dallas ran the ball at the 6th highest percentage in the league last year. Even that might not have been enough for McCarthy's taste. After parting ways with former OC Kellen Moore this offseason, McCarthy said this about his future plans. I want to run the damn ball. Okay. Mina, let's talk about this Cowboys team, because as much as the offense generates attention, I think there are sort of two questions. Should they be running the football more, and is it the defense that will actually determine this team's fate?
As far as whether they run the football more, as you saw there, they already ran it at a pretty high clip last year, so to turn that dial up even more makes no sense to me, especially when this has been one of the most efficient passing attacks in the NFL. the last couple of years. You trade for Brandon Cooks, your best player. They're returning their superstars both up front and in the secondary. Equally importantly, they're returning their defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn, which is a huge coup. He's been fantastic. And I think they addressed their two biggest areas of need. Run defense, they draft Mozzie Smith, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, and depth at cornerback. They trade for Stephon Gilmore. So the offense doesn't have to start out hot because this defense, I believe, is one of the three best in the league.
So, look, when you talk about they're running the ball they're sixth in the league at a 45% clip, that's fine. That's running the football. That's high. But it's when you run the football. That I think.
For the Raiders, if Jimmy can't get acclimated.
Dialing things up because you want to be in line to becoming the next head coach of a team in Kellen Moore. So what Mike McCarthy did is he sat back and he observed everything, and they did their off-season, so to speak, self-check and looked at things and said, look, we're running when we're supposed to be throwing. We're throwing when we're supposed to be running. And I think that is why he decided he wants to call the plays to do it the right way in the right way that he sees it. That's kind of how I look at it.
If that is what Mike McCarthy took away from watching Kellen Moore's offense last year, then they are going to regress this season because I did not think this was a team that was unnecessarily passing on early downs or in later downs, rather, when they should be running in short yardage. I thought the run-pass balance was tilted more towards running the football than, frankly, it needed to be. So if I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm looking at this roster, and I think it looks great. Both sides of the football.
On a certain defense that you're going to run the football. And that defense is for you to throw the football. That's what I mean when I say those sort of things.
I understand.
Okay, so when coaches are evaluating and breaking down the film, they're looking for specific things that they put in the game plan.
Yeah.
And when you get away from that, it drives them crazy. That's all I'm saying.
No, I hear you. I'm just saying if that's what his takeaway was from watching Kellen Moore's offense and how they approach different defensive looks, light boxes, down and distance, that he would be wrong. Because that was not the problem with this offense last year. Which didn't have any problems, by the way.
Jeff, final word?
I mean, my turn? You guys. I like to listen to this. It's a good show. Look, I think you're both still alluding to the same thing. It's finding the way to reduce the interceptions, and that doesn't necessarily mean passing less. That doesn't necessarily mean running more. It just means finding
coaches and players around the league that have taken the podium already today. So we're going to whip around the NFL. We have so much more coming your way here on NFL Live, including the Lions, who have been one of the league's most anticipated teams and stories to watch for. Stay tuned to hear what head coach Dan Campbell has to say about their mentality coming into the season.
You knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down.
Don't stop, Rock Campbell. He is the best as far as soundbites go. Hey, let's take a look at the Aaron Rodgers-sized poll in the NFC North. ESPN Analytics has the Lions as the most likely team to win the division, something they haven't done since 1993. That was Barry Sanders' 5th season as a pro. But it is close, as all 4 teams have at least a 12% chance at the division title. The aforementioned, and the man you just heard from, Dan Campbell.
Gardner Johnson. I mean, we got a lot more versatility, and that does come with the depth.
All right, so Mina, many were surprised when the Lions took a running back, 12th overall, specifically Jahmyr Gibbs, 199 pounds out of Alabama. But how does he potentially change this offense?
Well, based on what Dan Campbell's saying, which I loved, by the way, it gives them the sort of versatility and flexibility that you see in a lot of the best offenses around the NFL right now. Of the offenses that use the most 21 personnel, meaning the 2 running backs on the field, 3 were top offenses in the league. Baltimore, San Francisco, Miami. Now, they all use their backs in very different ways, but with the same goal, which is to use that formational flexibility to confuse defenses. Runs look like passes. Passes look like runs. You never know who's blocking. And for a back like